Welcome all for this book reading session, A New Earth by Eckhart Tolle. The Dreamer and the Dream. Non-resistance is the key to the greatest power in the universe. Through it, consciousness, spirit is freed from its imprisonment in form. Inner non-resistance to form, whatever is or happens, is a denial of the absolute reality of form. Resistance makes the world and the things of the world appear more real, more solid, and more lasting than they are, including your own form identity, the ego. It endows the world and the ego with a heaviness and an absolute importance that makes you take yourself and the world very seriously. The play of form is then misperceived as a struggle for survival, and when that is your perception, it becomes your reality. The many things that happen, the many forms that life takes on, are of an ephemeral nature. They are fleeting things, bodies, and egos, events, situations, thoughts, emotions, desires, ambitions, fears, drama. They come, pretend to be all important, and before you know, they're gone. Dissolved into the nothingness out of which they came from. Were they ever real? Were they even more than a dream, the dream of form? When you wake up in the morning, the night dream dissolves and we say, oh, it was only a dream. It wasn't real. But something in the dream must have been real, otherwise it could not be. When death approaches, we may now look back on our life and wonder if it was just another dream. Even now, you may look back on last year's vacation or yesterday's drama and see that it is very similar to the last night's dream. There is the dream and there is the dreamer of the dream. The dream is a short-lived play of forms. It is the world relatively real but not absolutely real. Then there is the dreamer, the absolute reality in which forms come and go. The dreamer is not the person is part of the dream. The dreamer is the substratum in which the dream appears, that which makes the dream possible. It is the absolute behind the relative, the timeless behind time, the consciousness in and behind form. The dreamer is consciousness itself, who you are. To awaken within the dream is our purpose now. When we are awake within the dream, the ego-created earth drama comes to an end and a more benign and wondrous dream arises. This is the new earth. So when we are talking about the dreamer, जब हम कोई भी dream लेते हैं, we find it, it's very abstract, it's very vivid, and somehow we see ourselves inside that dream. और अगर मैं कुछ देख रहा हूँ which is appearing to be very real and very intriguing at that time, does that mean that that is me? So when it says that the dreamer is the substratum in which the dream appears. So who we are is that person who is dreaming. He is not inside. Similarly, who we are in this real or in this earth school is like that dreamer. जो ये सब हो रहा है in the form, our attachment with the form, our attachment with our mind, our attachment and linkage of ourselves as our mind, our attachment towards this name which was given to us by others, and living that life with that name identity of ours. That's the dream. Because in reality, they are there for a specific period of time. This name identity, जिसको हम आज इतना बड़ा इम्पोर्टेंस दे के बैठते हैं कि दिस इज मी, यही तो मैं हूँ, अगर यही नहीं रहेगा तो मैं कैसे रहूंगा, ये है वो है, ऑल दैट is part of a dream because it has a validity, it has an expiry date. Similarly, when we are talking about a dream has a validity. एक रात में आएगा, या 2 घंटे में आएगा, 3 घंटे में आएगा. After that, it fades away. Lot of times we don't remember, and lot of times we do remember just the glimpse of it. You know, हाँ, कभी कभार पूरा ड्रीम भी याद रह जाता है, but yeah, it's a memory, nothing more than that. Similarly, who you truly are in terms of the consciousness at play, when you're here on this timeline or on this expiry validity date on the soul of earth, everything is part of a dream. And the more we make ourselves attached to this name identity of ours on this school of earth, the more we are trying to make sure that this dream is the reality. Because in reality, what we can now perceive through this body and with the perception of this mind is that everything is form based. जो फॉर्मलेस है उसको तो हम देखने की कोशिश भी नहीं कर रहे हैं. We are not even aware that there is something known as the formless, because the formless is which cannot be seen. उसको खाली महसूस किया जा सकता है. It can only be felt. And जब हमें ये realization हमारे अंदर जाती है कि this again the life we are living, we don't need to be attached to it because this is in itself a dream. और जब ये खत्म हो जाएगी, whenever the right time comes, it's just a dream which will be a part of a memory in our own subconscious mind or in the collective conscious mind, and just be registered there. Nothing more, nothing less. And that's reality. But in order to live the life, like, it happens in a lot of our dreams, where we are struggling in that dream to get out from somewhere, or probably it's an exam which we're not prepared for, whatever. और जब हम उस ड्रीम से उठते हैं, if it's a bad dream, where, there was not so pleasant experiences involved, what is the first thing we do? शुक्र है, सपना था यार, बच गए. That's exactly what is your reaction going to be when you come towards viewing this entire life on planet Earth, which is nothing but a dream with a validity and an expiry date. और उसके बाद भी रिएक्शन वही होगा, शुक्र है सपना था. That's reality. So we don't need, but the whole issue is that we get so attached to this name identity, wherein this illusion, this dream becomes our reality, और हम इसी reality पे सारा time चल रहे हैं. But this reality is not yours. It may be that it is for the body, because body also has an expiry date. It may be because it is for the mind, because the mind also does not, always be a part of you, the conscious mind. The subconscious is always there. But there's nothing more than a memory in your mind. But the more we get attached to this name identity of ours, we start living in the world where this dream or this life on this school of earth for us becomes a reality, because that reality is based on a form-based life, and the start of that reality for us is when we base this life based on the life of the name identity given to us. So जो भी आपके साथ हो रहा है, ये सब उस नाम की नेम आइडेंटिटी के साथ हो रहा है. But is that name reality you? Because if it was, where was it when the name was not given to you? So the more we try to base our lives on form-based experiences, form-based happinesses, form-based achievements, the entire evolvement or the entire thing, we are now based and attached to this name identity of ours, rather than just accepting that this is nothing but a dream which has probably an extended timeline. Going beyond limitation. In each person's life, there comes a time when he or she pursues growth and expansion on the level of form. This is when you strive to overcome limitations such as physical weakness or financial scarcity, when you acquire new skills and knowledge, or through creative action, bring something new into this world that is life enhancing for yourself as well as others. This may be a piece of music or a work of art, a book, a service you provide, a function you perform, a business or organization that you set up or make a vital contribution to. When you are present, when your attention is fully in the now, that presence will flow into and transform what you do. There will be quality and power in it. You are present when you are doing it not primarily as a means to an end, money, prestige, winning, but fulfilling in itself. When there is joy and aliveness in what you do, and of course, you cannot be present unless you become friendly with the present moment. That is the basis for effective action, uncontaminated by negativity. Form means limitation. We are here not to experience limitation, but also to grow in consciousness by going beyond limitation. Some limitations can be overcome on an external level. There may be other limitations in your life that you have to learn to live with. They can only be overcome internally. Everyone will encounter them sooner or later. Those limitations either keep you trapped in egoic conditions, which means intense unhappiness, or you rise above them internally by uncompromising surrender to what is. This is what they are here to teach. The surrendered state of consciousness opens up the vertical dimension in your life, the dimension of depth. Something will then come forth from that dimension into this world, something of infinite value that otherwise would have remained unmanifested. Some people who surrendered to severe limitation become healers or spiritual teachers. Others work selflessly to lessen human suffering or bring some creative gift to this world. In the late 70s, I would have lunch every day with one or two friends in the cafeteria of the Graduate Center at Cambridge University, where I was studying. A man in a wheelchair would sometimes sit at a nearby table, usually accompanied by 3 or 4 people. One day, when I was sitting at a table directly opposite me, I could not help but look at him more closely, and I was shocked by what I saw. He seemed almost totally paralyzed. His body was emaciated, his head permanently slumped forward. One of the people accompanying him was carefully putting food in his mouth, a great deal of which would fall out and be caught on small plate another man was holding under his chin. Occasionally, the wheelchair bound man would produce unintelligible croaking sounds, and someone would hold an ear close to his mouth and then amazingly would interpret what he was trying to say. Later, I asked my friend whether he knows who he was, of course. He said, he is a professor of mathematics, and the people with him are his graduate students. He has a motor neuron disease that progressively paralyzes every part of the body. He has been given 5 years at the most. It must be the most dreadful fate that he can befall a human being. A few weeks later, as I was leaving the building, he was coming in, and when I held the door open for his electric wheelchair to come through, our eyes met. With surprise, I saw that his eyes were clear. There was no trace in them of unhappiness. I knew immediately he had relinquished resistance. He was living in surrender. A number of years later, when buying a newspaper at a kiosk, I was amazed to see him on the front page of a popular international news magazines. Not only he was still alive, but he had by then become the world's most famous theoretical physicist, Stephen Hawking. There was a beautiful line in the article that confirmed what I had sensed when I had looked into his eyes many years later. Commenting upon his life, he said, now, with the help of voice synthesizer, who could have wished for me more? Who could have wished for more? So, when we talk about going beyond limitations, हर एक चीज में हम लोगों को see, because when we are talking about a life which is based on form based experience, kahin na kahin there always comes certain expectations, and there always creeps in some comparison when we see others, because then that becomes a common criteria for us to compare. आप कंपेयर किस चीज से करोगे? There has to be a common consensus where you can compare. I mean, you can't compare कि a fish is an animal and an elephant is also an animal. Who is superior? Okay, just for the matter that they are animal, they have totally different attributes. The fish can swim inside the water and live a normal life. But the moment it comes out of the water into the oxygen, it cannot survive. Similarly, an elephant, when it goes inside the water, cannot survive for for more than say 5 minutes, 2 minutes. But when it's on earth or it's living on oxygen, it's hale and hearty. फॉर्म बेस्ड में जब हम फॉर्म बेस्ड के साथ एसोसिएशन के साथ चलते हैं, we try to create certain limitations within our own selves in order to restrict our actual growth or whatever is what we are probably here for in terms of our purpose, in terms of our purpose for existence here. It is only and only when we are in the present, when we are fully in the now, जहाँ पे our life is not about running as a means to an end. पैसा कमा लो, गुडविल कमा लो, ये कर लो, so that end में ठीक होगा. Then you are in the moment and you are not bothered about what was what has happened earlier and what is going to happen in the future. What we are more concerned, or what you're only concerned, is what is it that I am doing, what is it that is being done through me right now. Totally, fully, completely engrossed. Similar to what a child does when he's watching his favorite cartoon. आप कोशिश करो, जितना मर्जी जोर से उनका नाम ले लो, at the first go they will not listen, because they are so much in that movie. That's a glimpse of actually being in the now. Not a very good example, but that is a glimpse of actually how it means, or what it looks like when you're in the now. That you're so engrossed that past और future को आप सोचते ही नहीं हो. आप जो फॉर्म बेस्ड एक्सपेक्टेशंस, फॉर्म बेस्ड कंपैरिजन, फॉर्म बेस्ड लिमिटेशंस अपने ऊपर लगा के बैठे हो, यू डोंट बॉदर एंड यू डोंट इवन थिंक, वो आपके माइंड में आते ही नहीं है, बिकॉज these form based things are nothing but a perception of your own mind. Nothing more, nothing less. So when we talk about this professor, I mean, Stephen Hawking, everybody is aware of how he was, and whatever he did in terms of his invention and everything. In spite of having such a big illness, where he was given a timeline, he survived. In fact, there is a very famous person, I'm forgetting the name. He was very good, very successful, doing very nice. At the age of 52, he was diagnosed with cancer, 4th stage. And he was said that you have 3 to max 6 months to live. Now, what this person did, he never bought the form-based limitation. But he said, I have 3 months or I have 6 months. I am going to live each and every second of my life now, being present, totally in the present moment, experiencing the joy of actuality of what is in that particular second. And he became so engrossed on living each moment, each second of his life to the fullest, that when the doctors projected 3 months to 6 months, actually he bought 17 years of more life. 17 years instead of a doctor diagnosis of a 4th stage fatal cancer, which said 3 to 6 months, by being in the now. That is the key. The joy of being. Unhappiness or negativity is a disease on our planet. What pollution is on the outer level is negativity on the inner. It is everywhere, not just in places where people don't have enough, but even more so where they have more than enough. Is that surprising? No. The affluent world is even more deeply identified with form, more lost in content, or more trapped in ego. People believe themselves to be dependent on what happens for their happiness. That is to say, dependent on form. They don't realize that what happens is the most unstable thing in the universe. It changes constantly. They look upon the present moment as either marred by something that has happened or shouldn't have, or as a deficit because of something that has not happened but should have. And so they miss the deeper perfection that is inherent in life itself. a perfection that is always already there, that lies beyond what is happening or not happening, beyond form. Accept the present moment and find the perfection that is deeper than any form and untouched by time. The joy of being, which is only true happiness, cannot come to you through any form, possession, achievement, person, or event, through anything that happens. The joy cannot come to you ever. It emanates from the formless dimension within you, from consciousness itself, and thus is one with who you are. So that is where the true joy of being lies. Because जब भी हम उसको एक फॉर्म बेस्ड एक्सटर्नल एनवायरनमेंट में ढूंढते हैं, what happens is always that you aspire for something, you get it, there is a temporary upbeat mood which we call as too much happiness or whatever word we want to use it. जैसे it's like you get used to that thing because now it's new, you are excited. The moment you get used to it, things fade away, you look for more excitement. And that's where it's like you're chasing something, and by the time you get something, there is always something else waiting for you to chase, because that's an everlasting, never ending process where you are just constantly running from one form based experience to another form based happiness, to another form based experience, to another form based happiness. And you are continuously in that race, and then at one point of time you become frustrated with the fact that why is it that I am unable to be happy? Why is it that I am unable to experience the joy of being? Because that's the wrong road. Anything that is external to you is never eternal. That is to say, anything that is outside of you has a validity, has an expiry date, and is not eternal. Whereas happiness and love and the joy of being is totally eternal, truly eternal. उसकी कोई expiry या validity नहीं है. It's just that the whole concept of happiness, love, and the joy of being are truly unconditional. And they are not to be found in the outside, but they are to be realized when we connect to our in self, to whatever is inside of us, because that is where they are. बाहर तो सब फॉर्म बेस्ड एक्सपीरियंस है, एक्सपायरी है, वैलिडिटी है. It's not permanent, it's not eternal. You will just be going one thing to the second thing to the third thing. It's an endless, never ending pursuit. But the realization of that true state of happiness, which is your actual, foremost state of being, that is where you will find that everything that is outside is nothing but hip hop, never ending pursuit. Because अंदर हमें कुछ चाहिए नहीं, हमें खाली जो अंदर है उसका एहसास करना है, उसको रियलाइज करना है. And that self-realization only comes when we start going within and stop being associated and attached to the content, to the form-based things which is outside of us, and start seeing inside of who we truly are. Allowing the diminishment of the ego. The ego is always on guard against any kind of perceived diminishment. automatic ego repair mechanisms come into effect to restore the mental form of me. When someone blames or criticizes me, that to the ego is a diminishment of self, and it will immediately attempt to repair its diminished sense of self through self justification, defense, or blaming. Whether the other person is right or wrong is irrelevant to the ego. It is much more interested in self preservation than in the truth. This is the perseveration of the psychological form of me. Even such a normal thing as shouting something back when another driver calls you idiot is an automatic and unconscious ego repair mechanism. One of the most common ego repair mechanisms is anger, which causes a temporary but a huge ego inflation. All repair mechanisms make perfect sense to the ego, but are actually dysfunctional. Those that are more extreme in the dysfunction are physical violence and self delusion in the form of grandiose fantasies. A powerful spiritual practice is consciously to allow the diminishment of ego when it happens without attempting to restore it. I recommend that you experiment this from time to time. For example, when someone criticizes you, blames you, or calls your name instead of immediately retaliating or defending yourself, do nothing. Allow the self image to remain diminished and become alert to what that feels like deep inside of you. For a few seconds, it may feel uncomfortable as if you had shrunk in size. Then you may sense an inner spaciousness that feels intensely alive. You haven't been diminished at all. In fact, you have expanded. You may then come to an amazing realization. When you are seemingly diminished in some way and remain in absolute non reaction, not just externally, but also internally, you realize that nothing real has been diminished, that through becoming less, you become more. When you no longer defend or attempt to strengthen the form of yourself, you step out of identification with form, with mental self image. Through becoming less in the ego's perception, you are in fact you are in fact undergone an expansion and make room for being to come forward. True power, who you are beyond form, can then shine through the apparently weakened form. This is what Jesus means when he says, deny yourself or turn the other cheek. This does not mean, of course, that you invite abuse or turn yourself into a victim of unconscious people. Sometimes a situation may demand that you tell someone to back off in no uncertain terms. Without egoic defensiveness, there will be power behind your words, yet not reactive force. If necessary, you can also say not no to someone firmly and clearly, and it will be what I call a high quality ego that is free of all negativity. If you are content with being nobody in particular, content not to stand out, you align yourself with the power of the universe. What looks like weakness to the ego is, in fact, the only true strength. The spiritual truth is diametrically opposed to the values of our contemporary culture and the way it conditions people to behave. Instead of trying to be the mountain, teaches the ancient Tao Te Ching, be the valley of the universe. In this way, you are restored to wholeness, and so all things will come to you. Similarly, Jesus in one of his parables, teaches that when you are invited, go and sit in the lowest place so that when your host comes, he may say to you, friend, move up higher. Then you will be honored in the presence of all who sit at table with you. For everyone who exalts himself will be humbled, and he who humbles himself will be exalted. Another aspect of this practice is to refrain from attempting to strengthen the self by showing off, wanting to stand out, be special, make an impression, or demand attention. It may include occasionally refraining from expressing your opinion when everybody is expressing his or hers and seeing what that feels like. So, when we are talking about the experience of the diminishment of the ego, that is a state where we stop, giving explanations, justifications, excuses, and, so many things, because that is nothing but, in reality, a silent form of ego restoration. जो हमें पता नहीं लगता. Because what happens is, if there is certain things where you experience in a situation, event, or with another person, and suddenly something happens, and there's an allegation by another person on you, where you feel that no, this is wrong, and you start justifying yourself, or you start making excuses, or you start putting the other person down, is nothing but a self restoration uh, response of the ego. But whereas if you can actually get on to a larger picture by just being silent for that moment and not reacting, it's very important. किसी भी चीज में जब आपको गुस्सा आता है ना, that anger has a validity of 15 to 30 seconds max. If you react in those first 30 seconds, chances are you'll be swayed away with the anger. But if you just control, I'm absolutely using the right word, control that anger at that time, because you want to express your feelings, but you do not want to be carried away with your feelings. Anger does not mean that you have to get on top of your voice to put the other person down, whereas displayment of anger can also be in a state which is after the duration of 30 to 40 seconds, where you can express to the other person in a normal tone that this is not making you comfortable, and this is probably rather making you angry at the other person. You do not have to react in a situation. You can always respond in a situation. Because जो वो reaction है, that is a self-created ego restoration mechanism. पता भी नहीं लगता कि हम वो कर रहे हैं. And anger is one of them. What is anger? जब हम गुस्सा होते हैं, हम क्या अगले को दिखाने की कोशिश करते हैं? We raise our voice. Okay. We try to put the other person down. What are we doing? We are actually trying to say, I am inferior. Sorry, I am superior and you are inferior. That's exactly what we're trying to do with anger. But deep down, if it's a situation which is uncomfortable, I would, because there is a certain attachment in all of us since we are here on this school of earth. So there is a bit of ego, a bit क्या काफी है सब में. It's very important to be aware of what is it that is triggering that event. And it is very important to express your response rather than react your response. And no way is it said that you let other people make you their doormats or, treat you like that. I'm not saying that. But there is always a way where you can be in that egoless form where you are not attached to so much to this, uh, the izzat part of the identity, of the name identity, but on a general, uh, you know, level of communication is that you can express your views, your comments, or whatever is it that you are actually feeling. But then there is a way, whether you want to be carried away with your feedback or you want to express your feedback. Because as I always said, we'll repeat it again, the feedback is always for the act, never for the person. So when your feedback is accompanied with the anger, it becomes a feedback for the person, not for the act. And what we're trying to do is actually mend or remodify that act, not the person. There are two separate things. So in situations, we should be very, very cautious that we are not, in governed with that instant ego restoration response, and we stay silent at that time, think over it, and then respond to that situation in order to give a feedback to the act and not to the person. As within, as without, so within. When you look up at the clear sky at night, you may easily realize a truth at once utterly simple and extraordinarily profound. What is that you see? The moon, the planets, the stars, the luminous band of the Milky Way, perhaps a comet, or even the neighboring Andromeda galaxy 2 million light years away. Yes. But if you simply simplify even more, what do you see? Objects floating in space. So, what does the universe consist of? Objects and space. You don't become speechless when looking out into space on a clear night. You are not really looking, not aware of totality of what is there. You are probably only looking at the objects and perhaps seeking to name them. If you have ever experienced a sense of awe when looking into space, perhaps even felt a deep reverence in the face of this incomprehensible mystery, it means you have relinquished for a moment you desire to explain and label and have become aware not only of the objects in space but of the infinite depth of space itself. You must have become still enough inside to notice the vastness in which these countless worlds exist. The feeling of awe is not derived from the fact that there are billions of worlds out there, but the depth that contains them all. You cannot see space, of course, nor can you hear, touch, taste, or smell it. So how do you know it exists? The logical sounding question already contains a fundamental error. The essence of space is nothingness. So it doesn't exist in the normal sense of the word. Only things form exist. Even calling it space can be misleading because by naming it, you make into an object. Let us put it like this. There is something within you that has an affinity with space. That is why you can be aware of it. Aware of it. That's not totally true either, because how can you be aware of space if there is nothing there to be aware of? The answer is both simple and profound. When you are aware of space, you are not really aware of anything except awareness itself, the inner space of consciousness. Through you, the universe is becoming aware of itself. When the eye finds nothing to see, the nothingness is perceived as space. When the ear finds nothing to hear, the nothingness is perceived as stillness. When the senses, which are designed to perceive form, meet an absence of form, the formless consciousness that lies behind perception and makes all perception, all experience possible, is no longer obscured by form. When you contemplate the unfathomable depth of space or listen to the silence in the early hours just before sunrise, something within you resonates with it as if in recognition. You then sense the vast depth of space as your own depth, and you know that precious stillness that has no form to be more deeply who you are than any of the things that make up the content of your life. The Upanishads, the ancient scriptures of India, point to the same truth in these words. What cannot be seen with the eye, but that whereby the eye can see, know that alone to be the Brahman, the spirit, and not what people here adore. What cannot be heard with the ear, but that whereby the ear can hear, know that alone to be the Brahman, the spirit, and not what people here adore. What cannot be thought with the mind, but that whereby the mind can think, know that alone to be Brahman, the spirit, and not what people here adore. God, the scripture is saying, is formless consciousness and the essence of who you are. Everything else is form, is what people here adore. The twofold reality of the universe, which consists of things and space, thingness and nothingness, is also your own. A sane, balanced, and fruitful human life is a dance between the two dimensions that make up reality, form and space. Most people are so identified with the dimensions of form, with sense perceptions, thoughts, and emotions, that the vital hidden half is missing from their selves. Their identification with form keeps them trapped in ego. What you see, hear, feel, touch, or think about is only one half of reality, so to speak. It is form. In the teaching of Jesus, it is simply called the world. And the other dimension is the kingdom of heaven or eternal life. Just as space enables all things to exist, and just as without silence there could be no sound, you could not exist without the vital formless dimensions. That is the essence of who you are. We could say God if the word had not been so misused, the word God. I prefer to call it being. Being is prior to existence, existence in form, content, what happens. Existence in the foreground of life. Being is the background, as it were. The collective disease of humanity is that people are so engrossed in what happens, so hypnotized by the world of fluctuating forms, so absorbed in the content of their lives, they have forgotten the essence, that which is beyond content, beyond form, beyond thought. They are so consumed by time that they have forgotten eternity, which is their origin, their home, their destiny. Eternity is the living reality of who you are. Some years ago, when visiting in China, I came upon a stupa on a mountain top near Guilin. It had writing embossed in gold on it, and I asked my Chinese host what it meant. It means Buddha, he said. Why are there two characters rather than one? I asked. One, he explained, means man, to the other means no, and the two together means Buddha. I stood there in awe. The character of Buddha already contains the whole teaching of Buddha, and for those who have eyes to see the secret of life, here are the two dimensions that make up reality: thingness and nothingness, form and the denial of form, which is the recognition that form is not who you